28 years later, the brand new horror movie. In this video we will be diving straight into its deeper themes and symbolism. There will be spoilers. Let us begin. The film is set 28 years after the events of 28 weeks later. Our protagonist is Spike, and he lives in the Lindisfarne commune. Lindisfarne, or Holy Island, is a real island off the coast of Northumberland, accessible via a causeway. I've been there with my family. It's one of my favourite places in the world. It's amazing. And it has a fascinating history. From the 6th century AD, it housed a monastery, a centre of Celtic Christianity. And in 793, a Viking invasion sent ripples throughout the whole kingdom of Northumbria. Here's an Anglo-Saxon account of the Viking invasion. In this year, fierce, foreboding omens came over the land of the Northumbrians, and the wretched people shook. There were excessive whirlwinds, lightning, and fiery dragons were seen flying in the sky. These signs were followed by great famine, and a little after those, that same year on 6th Ides of January, the ravaging of wretched heathen men destroyed God's church at Lindisfarne. So you can see why Lindisfarne was chosen as the setting for this movie. It's a focal point for so many of the themes: spirituality, war, famine. In fact, we later encounter a Swedish soldier called Eric, and he jokes that if he gets bitten, maybe he'll become a Viking. The movie really takes its time in building the world of the Lindisfarne commune. We get a real sense of how these people have been able to survive for so long. They are very much a community. A sign in the tool shed reads, "Don't take gear unless you need it." A sign beneath the shower reads, "Don't take too long." They ration their resources for the sake of one another. And they are very strict about leaving the island. Jenny, the woman at the gate, warns Spike that he can indeed leave to the mainland and come back. But if he doesn't come back, no one will go to find him. Venturing into the danger zone is something that you do at your own risk. Children are trained from an early age in the ways of survival. They learn the roles of the island community, and they are taught how to kill the infected with bows and arrows. Head and heart are the targets. And this rather peculiar mask serves as a target at one point, but we also see people wearing it afterwards at the party. Notice the arrow through the head and blood trickling from the eyes. This is probably a representation of the infected. And by wearing it, the islanders are confronting, perhaps even laughing in the face of, that which they fear the most. And in continuity with the history, the island community in the film appears to have a Christian ethos. The children sing "Abide With Me," a hymn which features in the soundtrack of the first movie. And the island banner contains the words, "Fail we may, but go we must. God send grace." But let's jump back a bit, because before we meet this island commune, there is a prologue set during the initial outbreak in the Scottish Highlands. We encounter a young boy called Jimmy, not Jim from the first movie. This is Jimmy. We watch him flee from his house as the infected unleash chaos all around him. And in the nearby church, he finds his father, the vicar, who tells Jimmy,
"This is a glorious day, a day of judgment."
He gives Jimmy a crucifix necklace and tells him, "Son, keep this with you always. Have faith."
My children!
Now, something has gone wrong in this man's theology. Rather than helping his son and his family, he's happy for them to be swept away by the horde. And church history is full of such people who claim certainty about the day of Christ's return. And to be fair, the rage virus is an especially nasty plague, a sudden intensification of the darkness in the world, the birth pangs that precede Christ's return. And yet Christ himself says that such things will continue to happen for a long time before he returns, and this calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God. It doesn't mean giving in to the forces of darkness. So basically, Jimmy's father calls it too soon, and kind of just gives up and encourages everyone to do the same. And actually, we go on to see that years go by and Christ has not returned. So Jimmy has been failed by his father, and we see him running off with the glinting crucifix necklace hanging upside down from his hand. And that foreshadows, of course, the end of the movie, when the protagonist, Spike, encounters a grown-up Jimmy and his accomplices. And at the end of the film, Jimmy is wearing the crucifix around his neck, and it's upside down, suggesting an intentional association with the satanic, with the Antichrist. Indeed, earlier in the movie, we see a wall graffitied with the words, "Behold, he is coming with the clouds," a reference to Revelation 1:7, which refers to the second coming of Christ himself. But by adding his name next to this verse, is Jimmy implying that he sees himself as some kind of fulfillment of the prophecy, a kind of false messiah figure? What's more, inside this house on the mainland, Spike and his dad encounter a man hanging upside down from the ceiling with a bag over his head. The name Jimmy has been carved into his back. Spike's dad warns that there are strange people roaming the mainland, and it seems that this man has been tied up and left for the infected by Jimmy's cult. Spike asks, why would anyone do that? His dad replies, maybe a punishment, maybe a warning. Returning to the end of the film, Jimmy and his accomplices bear a striking resemblance to a real Jimmy Savile, the British children's TV presenter who abused hundreds. My friend George Simpson draws out the comparison very well in his excellent article for The Express. The whole thing is well worth reading. I'll put a link in the description below. He says, in the final scene of 28 years later, Spike is alone on the mainland, being chased by infected, and is saved by an odd group led by Jack O'Connell's Sir Jimmy Crystal. He and all of his cult members are dressed like the late Sir Jimmy Savile, complete with his eccentric jewellery, tracksuits and long blonde hair. All the Jimmies hold weird makeshift weapons before cartoonishly slaying the zombies and cheering a variation of Savile's catchphrase, "How's about that then?" in unison. Characteristically, they're somewhere in between Savile himself and the ultra-violent droogs of controversial British classic A Clockwork Orange, a Stanley Kubrick film that was banned in the UK for decades. And it's interesting because the previous film, 28 Weeks Later, tried to globalise the setting in a lot of ways. You have US occupation in the UK, and the film ends with the infection spreading to mainland Europe. But with Alex Garland back in the writing seat, he kind of undoes that, and he says, well, actually, mainland Europe were able to fight back the infection, and so the infection didn't spread to the ends of the earth. No, it's been contained within the UK and Ireland. And this kind of UK focus is at the core of the franchise. It is drawing on quite specific British traumas. I suspect we'll find out more about Jimmy and his cult in the next instalment. But for now, it's notable that 28 years later is bookended with Jimmy's presence. As a boy, he was failed by his father, and now he has become something monstrous. What about Spike, our protagonist? Well, to begin with, his own dad seems rather admirable. He has taught Spike the ways of their Lindisfarne community. But as they return from Spike's first trip to the mainland, his darker side becomes more visible. He embellishes his account of Spike's accomplishments. He gets drunk, and he gets with another woman as his wife's condition continues to deteriorate at home. Spike recognizes his father's failings and pushes him away, and at the end of the film he finds a moment of solidarity with Jimmy because both were failed by their fathers, and Jimmy is set up as a new father figure for Spike. Let's hope Spike comes to see him for who he really is. So the film is raising all sorts of questions about masculinity. What does it mean to be a good man? What does it mean to be a good father? What does it mean to be a good son? And this is set against the backdrop of the infected, which have developed terrifying ringleaders called alphas. We learn that for some, the rage virus acts like a steroid, providing additional strength and intelligence. These alpha males are formidable in battle, and their trademark move is to rip the heads off their victims. So on the mainland, the infected live entirely by survival of the fittest, and the question is, how will the non-infected choose to live? Jimmy and his gang seem to be embracing survival of the fittest for themselves to chilling degree. But through Spike and his mother and the island community, we see a different way of life. We see the possibility of mercy and compassion. The film has a lot to say about death, especially through the character of Dr. Ian Kelson. For years he has been building a kind of temple from the bones of the deceased. Mementomori, he says, Latin for remember death, remember you must die. His spirituality, if he has one, is currently unclear, but the Bone Temple has strong pagan connotations. As the world watches a quarantined Britain, he wants anyone who happens upon his land to be confronted with the reality of death, the inevitability of death. And as he shows Spike and his mum around, he says, "So many dead, infected and non-infected alike, because they are alike." He goes on to say that every skull was a set of thoughts. These eye sockets once saw, and these throats once spoke and swallowed. The only certainty of life is death. And Kelson sees humanity as one, all in the same boat, infected or not. We are all perishing. Contrast this with Spike's dad. While training Spike, he says things like, "The more you kill, the easier it gets." He tells Spike that the infected have lost their minds and therefore their souls. And this is a commentary on the nature of war, bolstered by the inclusion of Taylor Holmes' 1915 performance of the poem Boots by Rudyard Kipling, a recording which has been played in US military schools.
Moving up and down again.
About the kind of trudgery of war. There are also fleeting cutaways of battle scenes from Laurence Olivier's 1944 adaptation of Henry V. In war, there is a great temptation to try and dehumanize the opposition, making them easier to kill. Now, I think you can make a pretty watertight case for just war against the infected, but though the infection has warped them beyond recognition, I don't think we can say that they are no longer human. And the film presses further into that when an infected woman gives birth to a non-infected baby, enabled, as Kelson puts it, by the magic of the placenta. And remarkably, Spike and his mother choose to take on this baby. Despite the risks, despite the astonishment of Eric, the Swedish soldier, they choose to nurture this new life in the midst of a hellish scenario. And I think that's rather beautiful. But then there's a bit of a gear shift when the film goes on to present something of an apologetic for euthanasia. And that's where Kelson and his pile of skulls comes in. Spike's mum, Isla, discovers that she is terminally ill with cancer and asks Kelson to end her life swiftly. And this is very timely because in the UK, just this week, our MPs voted on the assisted dying bill. Now, 28 years later, portrays Isla's death as sympathetically as it possibly can. We learn that Isla's cancer has metastasized. She doesn't have long. Her pain and confusion will only increase. Spike is young, he's struggling to come to terms with the news, and she realizes that his continued efforts to save her will put him in danger. So she decides to end her life there and then. She tells Spike that though Kelson can't cure her, he can help her. He can help her by killing her, allowing her to die in a moment of peace while she can still acknowledge her love for Spike. So the film is very keen to insist that this is Isla's choice. She is lucid when she makes the decision. No one has forced her into it. Spike himself is immobilized with a morphine dart during the process because he is the one who protests the most. So this is Isla's decision. She wants to die. And Kelson, a doctor, is happy to grant her request. This is a dystopian setting. It's kind of extraordinary circumstances in a sense. But this is the concern with assisted dying. When you put death on the table as an option that can be administered by medical professionals, more and more patients will start to take that option. And that shifts the atmosphere in society. We move away from upholding the sanctity of life, and people start to end their lives prematurely for all sorts of reasons. You see this slippery slope in all the countries that have legalized assisted dying. The marketing campaign for this film has been wild. The trailer contained a code written in a pig pen cipher, and when you decipher it, you get the words mementomori, and this is the password to log into a new website, rageleaks.net. Here you can find some bonus materials which provide additional context for the film, including a radio broadcast from Eric, the soldier from the Swedish patrol boat who gets washed up on the shores of Britain.
Mayday, mayday. This is Erik Sundqvist from the Öresund. We hit something. Boat started taking on water. The boat is, gone. 8 men on a life raft. Could have been more, but nobody wanted to leave without being heavily armed in case we need to land on shore. Somebody needs to come and help us. Send a rescue boat. Please, we're gonna stay away from the shoreline as long as we can. Is anybody listening? Is anybody reading this? Hello? Mayday, mayday. The Attribution survivors, we're still here. We're trying to stay away from the shore, but it isn't strong enough, fairly keeping us where we are, so if you wanted to send a rescue ship, now would be a really great time. Please, someone reply. We're still out here. This is really happening. They trained us, and I never actually believed we would actually ever have to face them. Not really. But I mean, other people have survived for a long time, so it has to be possible, right? We have weapons, at least. If somebody is listening, tell my parents, tell them I tried to help. Right, Chris, signing off.
And here's a message presumably written by the fictional character who set up this website. The virus brought us more than the rage, the sorrow for our lost home, the guilt for the ones we left behind, the righteous indignation for the secrets being kept from us. It's been almost 28 years since the outbreak, and still not a single shred of truth about what's really going on. They say it's to protect us, it's for our own good. After all this time, what are they still hiding? They classify satellite images, they forbid any communication with survivor communities, they suppress rumours and discredit reports that somehow the infected have adapted. They don't want us to see, but we must bear witness. All of us. So there are lots of intriguing details in play. The next film, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, has already been shot. It's being directed by Nia DaCosta, with a script written by Alex Garland, and Danny Boyle has said that he would direct a further movie after that if it gets greenlit, also written by Alex Garland. So this is exciting, a 28 years trilogy. In some ways, I'm hesitant to commit too much to my interpretations in this video, because it seems that Spike's journey is only just beginning. Here's what Nia DaCosta says about this brand new trilogy, as favourably quoted by Boyle. I think the first one, so the current instalment, is about the nature of family. The second one's about the nature of evil. And the third one is about the nature of redemption. Well, you have my attention. There we go, 28 years later, a very thought-provoking film. My name's Thomas Thorogood. I get into the deeper meaning of movies. Thanks so much for watching. Do subscribe if you'd like to stay in the loop. And remember, it's deeper than you think.